everybody look under your chair. No, that's not a thing here. All right. Well, hi, my name's Bryan Fite. Born and raised in Dayton. Been in cybers for a long time, since the Cold War. Actually did 4 years as a civilian at Wright Pat. And I sometimes joke about missing the Cold War. People are like, what are you talking about? Single adversary, unlimited budget. That is certainly not the world we live in today. Like I said, have lots of different roles. Hacker, entrepreneur, rebranded myself as a security researcher. But if I'm doing my job right, I'm a trusted advisor and try to bring people together for good. These days, my day job, I actually am an AI and security specialist. I identify as an AI Sherpa, meaning I try to meet people where they are on their journey, help them get to their destination safely and securely. And then I don't know if you've heard of a world's first cyber sport called Packet Wars. We invented that here in Dayton. We also have our own conference called DayCon. Shameless plug here. We're having our 20th year in August, so hopefully we'll get to see you guys there. We'll probably do some marketing around that. But we typically have 4 themes. So these logos, you'll see them pop up in the sessions. And this is point of origin hacking, radical thinking, beyond embedded, and tools of the trade. And so hopefully those will be helpful as we go through the presentation. I also have a disclaimer. Basically, these are my own opinions. They do not represent the views of my employers or my associates. My voice is my own. Please remember to spade and neuter your pets. Now let's get going. Chapter 1, Once Upon a Time. And this will be the PG-13 version, even though it's got R up there. There are only 7 stories that rule the world. And I don't know if you've heard this. Has anybody heard that before? That those themes exist in every single story. Overcoming the monster, the quest, voyages. And I used to attribute this to William Shakespeare. But apparently that's not correct. It's actually Christopher Booker. And to make my mea culpa there, I started to read this voluminous very large book and then started listening to it, but lost interest in it. It was fairly repetitive because there's only 7 stories. And I'd like to talk about maybe my hero's journey, hopefully, where I went out into the world looking for adventure, had lots of good mentors, faced some challenges, and what kind of brought me back home. And hopefully it'll all make sense and I'll be able to stay on time. Practitioner for a long time, so system confidence is a combination of trust and control. And if you don't have control, then you're relying on trust whether you acknowledge it or not. And so in the beginning, the Garden of Eden, that was a high trust environment. There was really only one rule. And then we had the original liar or manipulator, and then paradise lost because of that violation. So, what is the lesson here? Obviously, it's a tragedy, but maybe the lesson is, or the moral of the story, in the immortal words of Neil Peart, conform or be cast out. So let's talk a little bit about my practice and poo, and that's not the fuzzy bear or the stuff that you might have to scrape off your shoes. It's really talking about point of origin hacking. And the way this story goes is, as security researchers or hackers, we always look at, flaws in the systems or maybe how to break something in order to make it better or to test it. And so many times, and I don't know, do you, when you look at systems, do you look at how they're going to fail? I mean, doomsday, I'm sure, probably does. And then again, with the idea that you're going to be able to fix it or protect against it. And so this idea that you would come up with the initial point of origin, which is, well, I might defeat that system this way. And then maybe you never think about it again. And possibly simultaneously, other people are coming up with that same idea. Eventually, if you have a motivated adversary, motivated and capable adversary, they will find a way to take that theoretical and make it practical. And then it gets released in a proof of concept, and everybody believes it, and operationally transparent because we go ahead and fix it. So the point being, you should look at theoretical vulnerabilities. You should use your imagination. in your threat catalogs. And we have something that we didn't have back in the day, which is MITRE ATT&CK DEFEND. So you can take those infinite number of bad things that can happen and actually map them quantitatively to the ways they'll be exploited in the really real world. And in this, post-mythos, post-glass wing reality that we live in, every day is Patch Tuesday, so you should have a plan. And that gap that I'm talking about is actually shrinking. Fast forward to 2006, I also worked at LexisNexis for many years, and I wrote my first GSEC paper. Is any GSEC certified folks in the house? It's a great process where you can actually write a paper and you can avoid all 36 CPE credits just with the publishing the paper. Say, hey, that's good, save some time, save some money. But this particular one was on corporate identity fraud. And the premise went that typo squatting or where people were actually impersonating corporate identity assets to cause harm. Basically back then in 2006, it was just trademarks and brands. Maybe there was a vanity phone number or you meant vanity domains. And the litmus test was, is it actionable? Can we go sue these people for harm? And were corporations actually doing their fiduciary responsibility in protecting said assets? It turns out they weren't. And then I had a series of impactful experiences over the next 15 years. Before I wrote this second paper, which was essentially let's go back and look at the situation. Had we gotten better? Spoiler alert, we haven't gotten any better, and the attack surface has grown. Especially if you look at all the new domains out, it's something that humans really can't keep up with. And at my tenure in British Telecom, I was there for 15 years, I had the opportunity to go through something called corporate visions training. And it was basically, how do you sell a commodity? How do you sell me this pencil, right? So how do you do that? And I became aware of things like cognitive dissonance, confirmation bias, loss aversion. These things all refer to sometimes as lizard brain cues for humans. I also saw this social dilemma movie. Has anybody seen this? What I call anti-social media. And it exposed as how, attention is monetized on social media. So I'm getting a lot of this kind of information. And as part of one of our Packet Wars campaigns, we introduced the idea of the deepfake Justice League, and that was back in 2024. And the premise is that we are not going to be able to believe our senses in the future, and we need to have heroes that are going to help humanity survive the coming years. And so back then in 2024, I ended up finding out about a guy named Dr. Matt Canham, and also something that they had introduced called the cognitive taxonomy. And I went out to BSides in Vegas, met Dr. Matt, and I've gone down that rabbit hole. I was fortunate enough to actually be invited to an event at George Mason University by the Cognitive Security Institute, and they had a cognitive, it was actually cool. If anybody's been to George Mason University, they have robots running around shuffling food, very cool campus vibe going on, and the Cognitive Security Village actually had some immersive demonstrations. This is my research partner, Mo. We built some Packet Wars games there, and it was really to show how your senses can be fooled. They had a interactive session to try to let you experience phantom limb syndrome, or some special goggles that you could put on to feel what it might be like to be autistic. And so, again, it's easier to explain some of these fairly heady concepts with these immersive environments. And I basically became hooked. I had met a lot of new friends. Most of them were not from cyber. They're clinical psychiatrists, a lot of ex-government folks that had kind of were looking for their next adventure, some folks from NIST and National Science Foundation. And so I really was feeling it. And then at the right moment, I declared with confidence, hey, the currency of confidence is transparency and objective truth, AKA facts and maps. And right when I was ready to drop the mic almost in unison, I heard this chorus of people say, "Oh, grasshopper, you have much to learn. The truth doesn't matter at all. It's all about the narrative, the story, that it's a belief systems." So, chapter 2, the awakening. And honestly, I should have known that. I forgot it. I've been in corporate world for so long. Does anybody know a geezer named Win Schwartau? Okay, so this guy's pretty awesome. He's been in the scene forever. I guess he MCs Hacker Jeopardy every year. And he wrote a book called Meta-War, and I met him at the CSI event at George Mason. He's collected all the terminology, all the research. I finally had a language for this lizard brain stuff that I was referencing, and how our minds are being, with this technology kind of being warped and our attention spans being manipulated. And it started to dawn on me that, this human-machine interfaces, now right now it might just be the phone, right, and your eyeballs and your tactile response, but we have developed these human-machine interfaces. This is a giant book. It's actually published from Wright-Patterson Air Force Library. It's free, but it talks about the human technology nexus and the interfaces. And essentially what we're looking at now is having to declare this beyond embedded, is that the human brain is now critical infrastructure. It probably always has been, but as a domain, it is absolutely open season. This idea also that we have domains colliding. So we heard a little bit about IoT earlier, or the IT and the OT space. Those two domains have been creating lots of fun. There is no such thing as an air gap anymore. But let's bring another domain into that. And this idea that the cognitive, cyber, and physical coming together. This is a 10-layer OSI model. Is everybody familiar with the OSI model? Okay, so those bits up there are individuals, organizations, and governments. And so they're made up of humans that use systems. And the thought process here is, if we could take all of that data and create a model, we might be able to understand how we could be attacked across domains. And think of it as Star Trek chess here, right? So that if you really had the ability to do this, and it's a math problem, and so we started developing something we called supply chain smoking. So the idea that I could be the proverbial butterfly flapping my wings in China that could turn off a pumping station in Dayton, Ohio. Is there a path? Not a direct layer 3 path maybe, but if I could get to some person and convince them that there's a free PS5 waiting on the other side of some action, maybe I could manipulate them to do my dirty work. And if we could look and see all those paths, then we could actually find the one move, the most economical move, to mathematically reduce that risk. And so we would be taking our precious profession of information security and stepping it up and making it something more like an engineering discipline, which I think is where we have to go, but I'll digress. So if we can agree on something, it will help this presentation go smooth, that everything we perceive, think that sense, feel, think, that's my reality or that's your reality. And if everybody perceives reality, even in the same temporal space, differently, then could you agree, at least for the sake of this conversation, that alternate realities are coexisting at the same time? Does that make sense? No? We can argue it later. If you believe that premise, then we have to learn how to navigate alternate realities in the real world, aka my reality, or some type of shared reality as a baseline. Now, in this cognitive warfare space, we want to maybe define a couple of terms. So misinformation, false or misleading information that is spread unintentionally, like me attributing the 7 stories to Shakespeare, okay? My bad, mea culpa, I don't do that anymore. That's why I have those other slides. But then there's disinformation, which is actually false information that's spread to deliberately deceive. Then we have what I call alternative facts, or AKA bovine excrement, we'll refer to as BS, which is misleading or false statement presented as truth with the intent to do something, presumably nefarious, or steal your money. And Wynn put in his book, Meta-War, has come up with this concept of too much information. And that's not the one where you cringe when somebody's telling you things about their personal life that you really don't need to know. This is just the volume of signals that are coming at the human right now. How many people multitask? Okay. Well, actually, it seems like multitasking, but we don't do it. I used to do it a lot, thought I was doing it, but we're time splicing. And as you get older or you have more signals, it becomes harder and harder to simulate multitasking. And the idea is that we are actually, our noggins are coming under attack with this too much information. And as the other senses start to fill in the gaps there, it will be untenable. And I would suggest that we have a lot of problems right now in just paying attention or separating signal from noise. And so remember those gaps that we talked about earlier, there are new gaps starting and they are expanding. Systems of systems. I think I mentioned before that, or maybe I didn't, I'm not a bug hunter. I think it's cool that bugs are out there and people can fix them. I like architecture flaws. I love protocol flaws. They live forever. DNS being pointed the case there. So in our deepfake Justice League, when we're out hunting for, what would make a great member of a deepfake Justice League, we look at our kind of our five senses, and then we throw in a cognitive piece there. And the idea is that these sensory signals and the cognitive systems that we use, they interact in very, very complex ways, but they're very predictable ways. And if you remember, I talked a little bit about lizard brain stuff, because I didn't have terminology for it, but there's this system one, which is, it's very fast, it's subconscious, it's automatic, it's what we do for every day, when, at a certain point, muscle memory, you might hear referred to that, but it's error prone. And the four that we probably think about, those automatic responses to trauma, it's, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And you're going to do one of those four things if you're using system one. Now, system two is slow, and again, it's relative, right? It's conscious, it's expensive, and it's for complex decisions, but it's very reliable. And so this is that idea, if you can think before you click, slow down, you hear people say, calm down, take a break, then you cannot necessarily be manipulated when your system one is actually triggered. Just that slight pause will give you an advantage. And so I want to talk a little bit about what I call a reality distortion machine, how to create one without even trying. So I mentioned the social dilemma, and what I learned from that, and just kind of opening my eyes in the tech world, is there are perverse forces out there that are kind of aligned against humanity, whether they realize it or not, that they're fueling the greed and powered by BS. These reality distortion machines use cognitive dissonance, echo chambers, confirmation bias, and other weapons of mass distraction and addiction to divide and pwn the narrative. And we'll look at some split screens and talk about, how it actually manifests in its real life, and maybe you're having similar experiences. Sometimes we just call that sales and marketing. Buy this pencil, right? Maybe it's the tech bros who I'm equating to modern day robin barons who have so much wealth that probably don't really understand how the rest of the world lives. And so, and they think they have all the answers. Politicians, organized crime, corporate nation states, or rogue algorithms and lone wolves. So there are all those folks out there, and whether their motivation is to deceive, to commit fraud, or deceive to influence, or twist facts in a way to influence, this stuff is happening, and it's happening at systematic levels. And, I think whether you buy into this or not, things are definitely different than when I was growing up, where you could debate things with people and they wouldn't get emotional. Why are we always feeling these weird feelings all the time? And it's just kind of too much information, short attention span, etc. But can you imagine if a threat actor actually built a system like this on purpose, by design, to operate at scale? Well, somebody is building one like that. It's from NATO. They've actually got, I'll put the RFC out here, this innovation challenge from last month for agentic AI for cognitive warfare. And this is designed to actually influence elites or get people to second guess their decisions, to put delay into that response and disrupt their OODA loops. Now, there was a clause in this that essentially said that all the submissions and that they would adhere by a ethics code. Good luck with that, but it's at least in writing. And we'll revisit this before the end of the session. Has anybody heard the concept illusion of choice? The first time I saw it was for consumer packaged goods. And it had all the logos, and it's like, oh, look at all these different brands. Well, it turns out there were only 8 companies doing that. Here we have our 7 media companies that pretty much control all of the traditional media, and are now trying to acquire the new medias. And these are going to be, household brands. Does anybody out here still watch TV, or is it all streaming? Okay, so I'm a geezer. I still watch TV, but this idea that illusion of choice and who controls the media. Controls the narrative. And, I think where we're at now in this broken news and a dying medium, we've got this acquisition merger that's happening. So there'll be even fewer choices should anybody have an agenda and look to use this type of attention and platform for manipulating humans. So you kind of have to ask yourself sometimes, whose reality are you living in? I mentioned the split screen stuff. So this is a dueling narratives section. I could do 2 hours on this, and I promise you I won't do it, but I have a lot that have been on the cutting room floor. Being an old punk rocker, I had to reference the circle jerks, but push from the left and a shove from the right. Humans lose either way. So in this narrative, we've got a speedboat, and it's like, hey, we execute narco terrorists on site. Due process does not extend to these combatants of war, these people, those people. But on the flip side, we're going to pardon the persecuted who managed a dark net, and the government had overreached when they tried to hold Dread Pirate of Silk Road infamy accountable. And so that kind of weird feeling when you're seeing two things that can't really be true at the same time, or they're conflicting, that cognitive dissonance, that should equal a critical thinking cue, right? So don't just take, it at face value. If you get that feeling in your gut, listen to the little voice in your head or your gut, and maybe follow up and do a little bit of research. Another split screen, I saw this one. Somebody was at the White House chucking things out of one of the top windows. Did you guys see this story? And the president was asked, and he said it's obviously a deepfake host, and we can, hoax, and we can prove it. And there was this elaborate backstory. And it's like, why make that stuff up on the fly? We don't know what the final truth or the narrative is, whether it's untrained contractors that were up there, throwing stuff out the window when they should have been taking it out through the other door, or if it was a security incident. The real question here is temporal delays. Are we holding our news and our leaders to this level that if they don't have an answer, or I'll get back to you on that is not an acceptable response? Do we have to, just say something, whether it's true or not, or if we're aware or not? And so I think that's one of the things we want: instant gratification. We're not willing to wait, and all retractions are printed on the last page. They're not on the front page if there's an archaic media club newspaper. Who's here heard of Mythos? Okay, glass wing. So if you take Anthropic at their word, the normies and the government can't be trusted with their newest model, but they can be, right? These are the ones that it got away and was hacked. It broke out when old dude was at lunch, right? The bugs are everywhere, and the bugs, including the bugs of the ancients. Game over with the power of our AI. And they're definitely invested because they've given 100 million usage tokens credits away to committed to the cause for 40 companies that get in on this. Now, if you take a counterpoint or view to it with a healthy dose of skepticism, don't believe the hype. These guys are definitely doubling down on responsible AI as their brand. And then I wanted to know things like, well, how many O days did you find? And were they exploitable? And why should I believe you? And they aren't the only game in town. Is anybody following the DARPA AI Cyber Challenge? So building, we were going to participate in that. We ended up doing something else, which I'll talk about. But essentially, they wanted to build an autonomous reasoning system. You could drop an executable in there. It could look at the code, find the vulnerabilities, and in theory, actually create binary patches. Millions and millions of dollars were given away. The head of Team Buttercup for Trail of Bits, Michael Brown, he's a buddy of mine. He lives down in Cincinnati, so if you guys ever have the opportunity to meet that guy, he's awesome, and Trail of Bits folks are awesome. But with these dueling narratives, you've got two biases coming in. Fanboys can't wait to get the hold of this stuff, and then haters got to hate, on Anthropic. Either way, we need to practice cognitive discipline. If we are going to act on something that we're seeing that will have material impact to us or people we love or people around us or society in general, let's start to introduce some of this cognitive discipline. And just understand that, companies are out to make money, so maybe they do have an incentive to embellish a bit. The spiral of silence, I don't know if you've heard of this term, but basically it goes something as, if you think that your position is not going to be supported by the group or the tribe, then you tend not to say that. And it can actually spiral to the point where nobody's having any kind of conversations, emperor wears no clothes type thing. And then Goebbels famously said, if you tell a lie big enough times, it keeps repeating it, eventually people will believe it. And so these things, in not having social, civil discourse, going off into our own echo chambers, not talking to each other or building communities, that is not good for the species. Oh, the state of the fake, Deepfake Justice League, Bryan, what's going on there? Well, Sir Michael Caine, iconic voice and actor, 11 Labs has now gone to the artists and licensed their voices. And so if you want him to do a read over for your, your fiber supplement, he can do it. You can go buy it there. So I don't know if, and you're not going to know the difference. And, Sir Michael Caine's estate will make money through history, assuming people play by this, the rules. So I don't know if this is actually fighting back or cashing in. But this technology used to take a lot of cycles and a lot of tokens. 6 seconds of sampled video, $1.50, and you can have these voices, and you don't need to buy it from them. There's enough foundation frontier models out there that do this. So the moral of this story is everybody sells out eventually, so why wait? Anybody tracking prediction markets? Okay, so we have prediction markets where it basically allows you to bet on anything, bet on everything, and it's there's the casino economy. So we have who gets pitched on the gambling ads almost all the time. I don't know if I'm the demographic and I'm only getting it, but I get it through every possible outlet. And so this intersection of gambling, addiction, and corruption happening I don't feel it's good for society, but it's definitely happening. Does anybody remember somebody named Tokyo Joe? This was an early on stock manipulator where he had a newsletter that he was telling people stock tips, but then he also had a distractor, which was a sock puppet game. He was both of the actors in that thing, and basically pumped the stock up and then dumped it. He eventually ended up in jail for doing that. The poly market. So poly market is a prediction market where you can actually go bet on things. And this particular, it's kind of hard to see up here, I guess. This one here is $635,000 that was made by a single bet on the supreme leader being eliminated. And that was a pretty high payoff, but it happened right before the mission. So the timing was a little bit odd. And we had the Cauchy market, the CEO from the Cauchy side. They were also bets on the Cauchy prediction market, but they refused to pay off. And what their position was that we should not be directly tied to death. So it does look like some corporations have a line that they do not want to cross. There is no regulation going on in this space at all, and there's a lot of people cashing in big bucks. They talk about this being a truth machine. I'm not sure if that's a truth machine or not. Time will tell, maybe. Hey, anybody tracking OpenClaw? Call this the rise and the fall of the cult of the claw. So if you haven't tracked it, and there was actually a ClawCon in, was it March? So that's pretty interesting to be able to put a conference on. You know how hard it is to put a conference on, and I had everybody in New York doing this. But the OpenClaw has the distinction of having 250,000 stars within 60 days. That was the fastest growing open source project in developer history. It also has the distinction of having the first CVSS base score 8.8 in January. It tied with, I think there was another Microsoft one there. So that's a bad thing. So I think what we're looking at here, and kind of my point being, vibe coding is great for proof of concept, but it's an easy way to fail at scale. And both of these things are true at the same time. We also have some things that we haven't we haven't fixed yet, but they're still there, and they will come back to haunt us. So previous speaker was really talking about SBOMs and software bill of materials, understanding your dependencies, and those pipelines. And by the way, I know it's a developer, he wasn't thinking about people poisoning pipelines. I have always thought about poisoning pipelines or hijacking DNS to get somebody to go to your poison pipeline. But this idea that we could have that we can't trust our software supply chain, especially in that, like if you look at AI models, Hugging Face, anybody do anything with AI? Go to Hugging Face. There's, I think, almost 3 million models. Those are not, those are all customized large language models. Good luck finding out if any of them are poisoned. This is my truffle hound. He can smell your secrets from here. So, and this is the Lost Libraries of Alexandria. So coming to things with search, where search optimization has pushed things down so that it's not being trolled. And these foundation models, from a large language model standpoint, they will reach equilibrium at some point because there's only so much data that can be trained on. And it's the internet data. So you can imagine the good and the bad and the ugly that are going into these things. That's why you need guardrails, and you need guardrails for the guardrails. So it becomes an intractable mathematical problem. We don't have to talk about the tensor bits there. Just understand this does not end well for anybody. And the fact that system confidence is a combination of trust and control, there is a lot of trust that could be exploited when you go download these files or make important decisions based on weird machines. And then coming to a reality near you, the cautionary tale of Trufflehound, which we'll talk about in a minute. Yep, these are troubling trends indeed. Chapter 3, the journey home. So my North Stars these days, I've been doing, like I said, IT cyber for a long time. I have something I call my Bliss Index. You know, I only want to work on projects that give me joy with people I like that make the world a better place. The big challenge there is, you know, what I'm inherently biased, so my better place may not be your better place. I'm aware of that now. I was not always aware of that. Reform type A. And then this idea of going with slack and flow. And if you want slack, you must give slack. So just realize we're all on this planet together. And that has really helped me. And I'm kind of returning, if any of you know me from my hacker identity, Angus Blitter is back. And that dreamer, you know, the Cub Scout, the magician, the hacker, the punk, the Gen Xer, I'm reclaiming those and trying to have that ethos in the way I conduct myself. So our kind of theme for this year's DayCon is resistance is fruitful. You're like, okay, what are we resisting here? Give me some help. Well, we want to get rid of junk science if possible, or talk about it with those proofs. Want to get rid of the hate and fear that is keeping us from necessarily engaging with each other and talking and having, meaningful community. And I'm to me, this is what community looks like. People coming together, learning and teaching and breaking bread. So, thanks to Logan and the team for putting this together. We want to get rid of bad laws and unaccountable power that are actually not good for society. Maybe evil corps and tech bros. That's what I'm resisting. Addictive tech. I have purposely put my phone down. We have quality time. I try to be present. And you have to ask yourself, are you addicted? And there's some tests that we can share that, are you addicted to tech? But the easy way is just how long can you go without your phone? That's a pretty good one. And this is Dr. John Padfield. He is going to be our keynote, but his whole focus has been about the surveillance technology. So from Palantir to the flock cameras and all of these Internet of weird things that are watching us and tracking us and actually monetizing humanity. Is it a good thing? We should at least be able to have a conversation, and most of these conversations are not happening in the light of day, but in the middle of the night or through contracts that are being pushed through. And so I really suggest if you get an opportunity, he's got such a chill delivery method. His research is very transparent, and I'm really looking forward to meeting him in person. So the TTPs of a BS artist. So I have, indicators of compromise. We have any operators that know what an IOC is? Okay. So I've got this term I call IOBs for indicators of BS. These should be cognitive cues or prompts of significance that somebody is trying to manipulate you. If you've ever seen a movie called The Greasy Strangler, I highly recommend it. It is an indelible marker for your brain, but that's one of their taglines in there that they call each other this BS artist. Now, before Wynn put his book out, I didn't have a lot of the terminology and the science behind this. I had just come up with what I thought was pretty cool. I called it the doctrine of Ds. And if somebody tries to deny or delay or distract or deflect or divide or destroy, that maybe they don't have a real story to tell you. And it turns out that there is actually from University of Cambridge in the UK, something called the Depict framework. And it's similar in that if you're having a discussion or somebody's making an argument for or against something, and their whole model is to discredit the other side, that's an IOB. If they start to appear to fearmonger instead of maybe sticking to the story and the facts, you might be an IOB getting manipulated. Polarization, to divide, keep them separated. Impersonating experts. Conspiracy theories and pumping those up, that's always a good indicator that somebody is really can't address the facts of the situation. And trolling, to get an emotional response out of somebody else on the other side. There is also, they put out this misinformation susceptibility test. It is really cool. I think they've had like 10,000 people go through it. I've run it through a couple of these exercises. So there are some people trying to put some real science behind this, and they're not just consulting for the social media companies who historically, they know all of this stuff already. Just like casinos understand, that's why they designed the casinos such a way that you can get in. It's like a Roach Motel, right? You can get in, but good luck getting out. And then there are no free drinks, meaning if you're not paying for a service, you are the product. Know thy enemy. So cognitive warfare countermeasures, tools of the trade. So I'm not going to leave doom and gloom. I fortunately or unfortunately, am an eternal optimist, and the Boy Scout in me wants to help save the world. So let's see if we can start down that road. We do not have BS detector glasses yet. We are working on it, but we don't have it. So it's going to take a little bit on your part to defend and protect your own cognitive space. Thank you for Win for coming up with two techniques. Critical thinking, which is like, duh, okay. And that's not like a class that you can go to. It's not, a module in a STEM that critical thinking may not really be in our current system. But critical ignoring is something you can do yourselves, which is don't just put the phone down. Count to 10. Don't click. Don't feed the trolls. Don't doom scroll. That has been the best thing to help me, and my attitude is just not, looking at your phone, you should not start to feel emotional, right? What is going on here? And that is a physiological response to being manipulated, again, on purpose or just because it's effective and people can make money on it. Come up with this System 1, System 2 optimization. Act with purpose. Practice temporal patience. Temporal patience, yeah, count to 10. Do you feel the need to push that button now? Or if you don't care about the Kardashians, don't click on it. Don't take the bait. Now, if you do care about the Kardashians, fine. There's television shows, there's social media, go for it. But for me, I've cut some of this stuff out, and being a techie, and I was like, I don't have a problem. I definitely had a problem with it. And then this concept of pre-bunking, and this came out of Cambridge. So you can start to inoculate yourself against BS. You can start to harden your System 1, System 2, getting from one to the other, and by just understanding how these systems work against your best interest. And I had something, being a hacker, applied deception. I lie to robots. I lie to liars, right? So how would that be? Who puts their real information on their socials? Okay, nobody would admit to it anyways, but when I get birthday wishes from people on the internet, it's like, great, that's nice. It's not my birthday. So you really has a very easy way to know who's your real friends or your inner friends or closer versus, and even one of the things that we're trying to do now with the in-person, we should maybe even consider this for B-Sides next year, key signing parties or signal exchange parties, doing something in meet space that you can't do online that can give you a higher level of confidence that the person on the other end of that screen is who they say they are. And so to me, there's lots of little tools like that, and it's lying for good, or putting artifacts or deception tokens, things out there, canaries that can give you, at least some heads up or a minor advantage. So, calling all truffle hounds. So if anybody's actually doing penetration testing, red teaming, where you're out there looking at poison pipelines or looking for leaked secrets, you should really be careful. We talked about this little campaign here, think before you click. It's called Count to 9. So their big innovation, you don't have to go all the way to 10. Just go to 9. And this is a marketing campaign where they're trying to teach kids to be safe online. So it's kind of fun, edutainment. So apparently the main thing is just think before you click and having some cognitive discipline. I say don't take candy from strangers. When I used to play a lot of capture the flag games, and we had one time we played a game and this guy popped root. He thought he popped root on the system and just started downloading all this person's scripts. They were all poisoned. And of course we became compromised. So, be careful who you're accepting software from or invites from or building relationships with. No sole source intelligence. If you're going to make a decision of significance, make sure that you double check your sources of intel, maybe even validate it a different way. And that will always, anytime there's a misconnect or a disconnect there, that should be an indicator of not to click and to maybe do a little bit more research. We're also looking at ways that maybe we can look at rhetoric and hypocrisy as other indicators of BS. So we're trying to get as many signals to allow us to make the best decisions. And if anybody has any ideas, I'm just in Dayton here, so would love to have the conversation and figure out, because we really are outgunned in this particular case. And then we should reclaim our hard-fought, forgotten wisdom. So I mentioned the lost libraries of Alexandria. There is a lot of good information. In fact, LexisNexis had a term for taking public records, and they would fabricate intellectual property. And that's how all of those index records, which were one time, public records, became an asset, and they could monetize it. So my suggestion is that you probably have data that is not out on the internet. Maybe you should keep that. Maybe you hoard it. Maybe you curate it. Maybe you can go read books that have something there and transcribe them, or go to the internet archives, and maybe selectively share those artifacts and knowledge with others. But don't necessarily give them up for free to a Hoover that's going to build the next large language model to be used to destroy humanity. And then maybe, just maybe, with conversations like this, and getting out and meeting people and rediscovering a community, this looks like community, that we can develop a shared reality and have some grounded truth or shared reality that we can use as a starting point for having more beneficial communication and conversations. So some of the non-traditional signals and decision support tools that I would suggest that people consider. Has anybody seen the Pentagon Pizza Index? Okay, so yeah, okay, it figures, it tracks with us being here. But if you haven't, this is basically an index that has tried to associate when late night pizza orders go up in the Pentagon area, that's probably we're going to be doing something in the Department of Defense or Department of War, whichever, I still use DOD, is going. And that's a non-traditional signal to be sure. This is my new favorite. And again, it's kind of hard to see. This is the Apocalypse Early Warning System. And this tracks all private jets. So in theory, if you start to see a bunch of rich billionaires with private jets leaving or going someplace, that could be an indicator that something's going to hit the fan soon. This is a paid service, as one of the folks over at the Cognitive Security Institute, but this is betting intelligence. And so what they've done is they're looking at the prediction markets and trying to infer from that what's actually going to happen. And you'll see a lot of traditional outlets are now going to those places. So the question is it self-fulfilling prophecy? Is it insider knowledge? I don't know, but it's very interesting as an alternative source of information. Goods Unite Us is a way for you to find out how to spend your, vote every day with your own dollars. Now, these are the OGs, so everybody knows about Snopes. So to find out, so it's still there, and you can go there when you're counting to 9, maybe go check, see what Snopes says about it. Maybe it's a fiction, or maybe they can give you confidence. Another one that you don't think about, I'm a big fan of Consumer Reports. They have started to do some debunking. And again, the point here is you need to have some alternate sources for information. I was really into this one for a minute. It's Resist and Unsubscribe, that you might be able to influence the anti-social media companies by unsubscribing. I don't know, it didn't move the needle too much, but people are out there trying to figure out ways to use the current system to benefit all of humanity, not just some people who happen to, have lots of zeros in their bank account. Always follow the money. We've heard that before, right? So this one, $1 billion, right? Well, that's not exactly right. Reuters has released, this was like 12 days ago. There's been $7 billion made on the prediction markets for people betting on the war and what that was going to do to oil. So, either they have really good algorithms, inside information, people are making money. So I mentioned the glass swing and the mythos. Here's a split screen, maybe a way to start to leverage the split screen if you see that and you feel that feeling. So, here's the anthropic position. Here's the, hater or the skeptic. And some objective truth lives there, right? This is a spectrum, and we're living on the spectrum. So there probably is no absolute truth that everybody can believe or adopt, but there could be a ground space that we could all that's objectively understand. And then you have the other stream, which is pure BS for whatever motivation is happening there. If we practice cognitive discipline, we can at least have an edge to see that. Now, if it's blue pill, red pill, if you want to live in that matrix, then that's fine. Just be aware of that you're doing it. Do it consciously. Don't just let it happen to you. And more in this post, and this is not really a cyber presentation, but I applied this because, I'm not read in on the NDA. I was not part of one of those 40 companies that got to participate. I do have clients that are doing that. So the first thing that I was telling my stakeholders is, look, don't panic. Let's act with purpose. Let's practice hypervigilance. Let's accelerate our maybe AI-assisted threat hunting. Every day is Patch Tuesday, and the idea that you only have to patch your high-vons, nope, because these can be all chained together. So the tech debt collector is knocking at the door. And we should certainly monitor Anthropic's Glasswing comms. They just put something out today before I came in. I have not had a chance to read it, so I can't comment on it yet, but I will read it when I get home. Contact your vendors, see what they're doing about it. And then go ahead and hack yourself. Be prepared for the possibility that you're going to have to take your tier ones offline because they've been successfully attacked, or you're going to have to do some type of radical identification because, you've got a vulnerability that's exploitable and you don't have a patch. So you're going to have to come up with some kind of compensating control. And then I think we heard it discussed a couple in the last presentation. Understand your dependencies, and maybe it's those hidden dependencies. You never see the one that gets you. Don't be, collateral damage in somebody else's blast radius. Have a plan. And then as we, get ready to wrap up here, let's see if there's a way that we can actually optimize and harmonize our System 1 and System 2, and that might be playing a game. So with Packet Wars, we do red team, blue team. We've introduced purple teaming also. So that is give you a feedback and feedback loop. And what we found in our Packet Wars games that, I guess surprisingly, it's the post-mortems, like the playing the game. People like to do that. They like to win. But it's typically the post-mortems when we come together with the teams and actually talked about, well, why were you targeting that? And what technique worked? What didn't work? And that's that idea that we can take this educational, entertaining system and actually get better at it. And so we're building out these kind of cognitive Packet Wars campaigns under the Deepfake Justice League. I'll have a QR code. If you want to play some of the games, you can. And, we're probably even going to open up some games to teams. So maybe whoever wins the capture the flags, you can let us know about that, and we'll get them a seat at Daycon. Oh, and I remember I told you NATO's building a reality distortion machine. Well, so are we. So this is relatively new information I presented initially Monday, so you're only the second group of people to see it. But we've got Project Purple Egg, which is a reality distortion machine. It's powered by our Packet Wars primitives using total telemetry, ontologies and taxonomies from compliance regimes to the cognitive attack frameworks, cognitive attacks taxonomy. All this goodness and the stuff that we did originally started out with DARPA 3 years ago, ended up as a SBIR for the state of Indiana. You guys, SBIR, you guys probably know the government research stuff that we used applied for grants. But we created these things, weird machines that we call emergent generative generators. So they're custom built small language models that are not allowed to talk to anything. We keep them in egg cartons. Kind of keep them in the dark, but it allows us to have very get the benefits of generative AI without the downside of the non-deterministic stuff. So I was talking to a banking client, and he's, what's the thing that you fear most about these generative AIs? And he just says, well, look, my calculator doesn't hallucinate. I think that says it all. So how do you fight those types of things and not necessarily have to put AIs to watch AIs to watch AIs? And we run these things in BSD jails, and I'm running some of them successfully on 12-year-old Mac server trash cans, if you've ever seen those. So maybe not the most efficient, but they're certainly secure. And there's an architecture. This is all Creative Commons published, so I will make that available in the link. Here's the purple teaming concept. So you have the central scrutinizer here. The cool thing about running these in these simulations inside of a safe area, besides being safe, is you can adjust the temporal bits, so you can actually speed up time, and you can run these campaigns at scale over and over. So you will find the one attack that will work. And we run through these on phishing exercises, and so I know where my blind spots are phishing. I could probably successfully phish myself and we know that works for that use case, and so we're building out new ones. This is some work that was done by the Cognitive Security Institute, Evil Twin, and very interesting, too complicated to go into, but the idea is you could have a digital twin, you could put in a simulation that you own, and you could throw every attack at that digital twin, and you would find the places where you'll fail, which then gives you an opportunity to put defenses in place for those particular types of attack. And it can all be put into MITRE, attack, defend, so that you can get very actionable about it. And then this is another, it's not an Air Force, but there are two Air Force researchers in here that have come up with the multi-domain cognitive OODA loop. So if you're familiar with the OODA loop, attackers are going to want tods that. So anything that you do to keep that from happening is going to give you an advantage. Cory Doctorow, or the crusade to end shittification. I don't know if anybody's following this, but there's a great campaign from Norway, where it's this guy, he's got this heavy accent, and he's like, oh, I'm the guy who makes things crappy. So you take this really great thing, we'll make it crappy. So they want to end that. And again, this is a way to reach non-technical people to just say, hey, are your apps getting better? Do you really need to have a new interface every time? Personally, I would pay money to keep my interface on my phone the same all the time because of my muscle memory, but apparently it's not a thing. And for Win, he's like, bottom line is we built these machines. We are going to have to coexist with them. So the question is, can we live with these weird machines that we've created? And can we keep our humanity? And can we be nice to each other? This is my Angus Blitter's 5 points to save the world and make America America again. Again, I'm a Gen Xer, so it's a little bit different. I'm trying to boycott anybody who's capitalizing and making money on dividing people. I'm doing it one subscription at a time. Repeal or reform Section 230. I don't know if you know what 230 is, but it's basically a statute that gave social media platforms and online platforms the ability to, they have no accountability for anything they post. So that is very perverse, and we know that they're harming children. We're going to find out that these phones were more addicted, and probably the worst thing we've created since cigarettes as far as our health. But they have carte blanche. So until that happens, they will continue to be able to do it. Let's take the politics out of the profit out of politics, wars, prisons, and poverty. That should be an easy one to agree on, unless you're in that business. I would never have suggested compulsory service, and I don't mean necessarily having to serve in the military, but maybe volunteer, be something in the community. If we're just sitting in front of our phones and our kids are sitting there, they can't make eye contact, getting out and being of service, seeing how the other people live. I think it would, and you're going to have some skills, when I worked at the base, it was a summer youth employment program that got me that job there. And then my hobby and interest became a career, a viable career. until I'm replaced by a large language model. And then any public officials who speak in their official capacity as a public officer, they should be under oath and held subject to penalty of law, perjury. So let's unsubscribe, rebuild community, slay dragons, protect your noggin, and save the world. Join the community. QR code this if you want to play some games. Hopefully you can join us at Dayton in August. Don't panic. The final chapter has not been written yet. Thank you.